Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaron Canole, and welcome back to the Movie Battleground. Where I talk to people who were around while I was away from the game. Amaru Moses was the name that came up when everybody said he's going to do well, he's going to do well. And no spoilers on the match, but win or lose, he did do well. And today I have the gentleman who, and I know he's going to hate that I say this because he's very humble, but I have contended, and until my mind is changed, I will continue to say he is the best player to have never won a title that has ever played the game that I have seen. And I'm going to bring him on the screen and intro him now. He is Jeremy Adams. How's it going, sir?
I'm doing great. It's been a long time. I'm excited to be back a little bit.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, it has been a long time. I don't know if you played after I'd left. I can't remember exactly when your last match was, but I know it was a few years ago. And first off, welcome back. And second, what was it like just kind of getting ready and getting back into it?
Yeah, I actually have never played in the 3-judge format, so it's something I watched. I actually judged a couple of those matches when they were going on a couple years ago, and I've watched a lot of them. But this will be my first time in that format, and it's been a few years since I've done any kind of debate, so I kind of feel like I'm starting over. I'm kind of starting from zero. But it's been, just kind of thinking, through these movies, thinking about them, getting my mind back in that mindset is pretty fun because, it's way different than thinking about trivia. It's a different mindset, and it's always fun.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm so happy to have you back. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back for just a minute as I bring on your opponent. And, it's kind of a difficult situation with every one of these matches. I feel like I spend more time hyping up the people I'm familiar with, but that's because we ended up in this situation where so many rookie competitors got paired against people with experience. And I'm going to hype up my players as much as I can, but it's hard to speak on their accomplishments and their ability when I don't actually know them. Enter Mr. Kevin Moreno, who had the glorious opportunity to be paired up in this match. Kevin, how are you feeling tonight, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm good. I'm really confident. I'm pretty sure I have a chance of winning this. Like, you never tried this before, but I've judged, so I'm pretty sure I have a great confidence that I could do it. Wait, I think my manager's calling me. What's that? Oh, he is. He has. He's been he really does some question with them as well. I see. Okay. Well, my manager told me about my opponent. I have a 12% chance of confidence now.
Hey, 12% is still double digits, baby. Take it for what it is. No, man, but I'm looking forward. As you said, you have judged a number of times beforehand in the previous iteration of it, but you never actually got on the field. So I'm happy to have you here with us. And I'll go ahead and bring in your competitor as we get to explaining the game and moving on to it. So Movie Battleground is a best of 5 rounds. It is the first to 3 points to win. There are up to 5 rounds of debate. The first 4 are regular debate. That 5th one is called the blind round. We'll get there if we need to. As I said, each round is worth a point. If a competitor does happen to get 3 points in a row, that will be a win by knockout. But as I said, like with the blind round, we'll deal with that situation if we get there. Speaking of those first 4 rounds of debate, they are regulation debate. These are 4 questions the competitors were sent ahead of time. They have been given time to prep for this match, and the format will be the exact same. They will get a 60-second opening argument that will be followed by 2 minutes of a chance to expand and explain their choice. 4 minutes of open debate follows that. That's where they scrap, fight, go back and forth as respectfully as possible, which I know seems contradictory, but it is the rule, to make as many points as they can. And then they will have 1 minute to close out their round and kind of settle the score and bring it to an end. I'm not alone, though. I am joined by, at the moment, 2 great judges in the background in Papa Jacob West and Noah McCausland. For the moment, I will serve as 3rd judge. We may have a 3rd judge show up at some point. I don't know. Work's a bitch and life happens. So until he gets here, if he gets here, I will be the 3rd judge for these 2 great gentlemen. But it doesn't really matter what we are. It all matters on their arguments and what they bring. So, guys, I won't make you wait any longer. Let's go ahead and get into this. And question number 1 is such because the week that this double event is happening, unless pre-recording screws me and the movie ends up moving, we have probably one of the most anticipated musicals of the year coming out in a year filled with musicals, being Dear Evan Hansen, based on the hit Broadway musical from the writers who have gone on to write films such as La La Land and The Greatest Showman in terms of music, from director Stephen Chbosky of The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This is a movie that on the surface has a lot of elements that could make it great, and a really odd looking Ben Platt at the front of it all. And so that's why the question today is, what is the best adaptation of a Broadway musical to a big screen film? And so the way that this was set up, Kevin, with all that 12% of confidence, due to the random wheel spin, you were spun as our favorite today. So you had the choice of which questions you wanted to go first on. You chose to go first on questions 1 and 3. So that means you will be up first on this one as I go ahead and bring up your timer. And your first minute on the clock to open will start when you begin speaking.
When thinking of one of the best adapted musicals, I could probably go to films. I really think Chicago is one of it has one of the most phenomenal casts of Richard Gere, Katsudita Jones, Renee Zellweger, John C. Reilly, Queen Latifah, and of course the great appearance of Lucy Liu. The dance is flawless. The jazz is quite astonishing. Even the costume is brilliant. But also with the talented director, it also led to a modern appearance, like a reinvention of the musical that that came to light through from 2000 to now. I am quite astonished by this, and that's why I chose Chicago.
All right, that'll be time on the opening. Jeremy, when you speak, the clock will start ticking.
Okay, when we look at the great musicals that have come from the stage, I think that the golden era, the trend-setting era would be in the 50s and 1960s. And in the 50s, you started seeing a lot of great groundbreaking musicals like Singing in the Rain, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. But there was a bit of a stodginess to a lot of those films. A lot of these were kind of like for the older audiences. And when you get in the late 50s into the 60s, now you're wanting to get more of the youth market. Elvis is big, rock is big. So this new musical West Side Story they brought to the screen, and it blew the doors off everything. Robert Wise and choreographer Jerome Robbins took bold new expressions of directing and filmmaking to bring this thing to light. You had a great young cast. You had some of the best dancing that had been done at that time. And you had some really prescient themes of racism, of youth, of crime that hadn't really been dealt with. And it set the trend going forward through the great musicals of the 60s, good trends, whereas I would say his movie set some bad trends.
There we go. All right, last sentence in. Kevin, back to you. You have 2 minutes on the clock to continue your points. Time starts when you speak.
With the conclusion of let's see. I think by the dancers, it gave us such a award-worthy moment. It gave Katsudita Jones her Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, and it won Best Picture. I think it's still one of the I think to this day, with the song "All That Jazz." Especially the tap dancing number done by Richard Gere during the court scene.
Very good, buddy.
Congrats so far, man. Don't worry.
Very tricky for me. Also, Trevor Subbuck. Chicago. It's been part of Chicago. It's been part of actually part of my life because well, it's been years since I only saw the movie till high school. The soundtrack's been part of through ever since it came out because like my brother always played the song, his album from the car, and it's been stuck with me throughout my childhood, through adulthood. So especially with the song "When You Play Bulletproof as a Gun," I I always say, "Oh yes, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both reach for the gun." I was so I would just have the quick reaction, and I I just I yield my time.
All right, no problem, man.
You're doing great, Kevin.
I was gonna say, Kevin, if it'll help you, you are allowed to use notes. So if you have something in front of you, if you just want to jot stuff you think of down, so it'll kind of stick with you longer, if that'll help you. But you're doing great so far, man. I know you're new to this, so don't worry about it. All right.
Thanks.
Doing great. You're doing great.
All right. So, all right, Jeremy, we'll go ahead and move on to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Okay. Yeah, just to kind of expand on what I was saying in my opening, West Side Story was a movie that was just incredibly innovative and creative for the time. And like I said, it was dealing with themes that were coming up. We were starting to see this rise of the teenager. They were making movies appealing to the teenager market, and that is a trend that's continued to this day, and it's dominated movies throughout the 80s, 90s, this youth market. And West Side Story was one of the first movies to really appeal to that. And they brought these genius talents. They brought Stephen Sondheim, who went on to be one of the great Broadway composers, to do the lyrics. They had, Leonard Bernstein doing this beautiful, beautiful score. And all of this, since the musical was made pretty soon after the show had been big, it was just like a couple years after they brought it to Broadway. You had all these talent there able to put their input into the movie, and you had these brilliant performers, George Chakiris and Rita Moreno, both on Oscars. They're just brilliant dancers and singers. You had a tremendous movie star, Natalie Wood, really anchoring this movie. It's based, on Romeo and Juliet. It's an update. It's a great story. It's one of the best tellings of the story. And yeah, this innovative techniques that they use in this movie in terms of starting off with, real footage of New York and then going to these sets, moving the camera a lot. These are all things that were pretty new at the time. And this would lead to movies like My Fair Lady and Mary Poppins and Sound of Music, which, they're carrying forward this energy and this creativity that West Side Story had really codified. And unfortunately, look at a movie like Chicago. This is a movie that didn't really have any new techniques to bring. It was kind of taking some techniques from the past. And it started this trend in modern musicals where you get big name stars like Richard Gere and Renee Zellweger, who are not really talented singers or dancers, and you have to edit the movie around them. You have to do a lot of close-ups. And unfortunately, that's led to us getting, Gerard Butler singing in Phantom of the Opera and Russell Crowe in Les Miserables. It started kind of a bad trend for that movie.
And time. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move on to the open debate round. There will be 4 minutes on the clock. The time will begin when the first person speaks.
Go ahead, Kevin. What do you got?
What do you got? I would think I made since I started first. I thought you lead it. But there's custom tradition for that.
Okay. All right.
I don't care who speaks.
To kind of go back to what I was saying, about Chicago. This was a movie that, was a big hit at the time. It won a lot of Oscars, but, opinion to this movie, particularly if you go to, the musical fans, people in the musical world, has kind of soured over time. You'll generally see it on a list of most overrated Best Picture winners. And like I said, the editing techniques that they had to use to kind of cut around Richard Gere and Renee Zellweger and stuff like that, they started some pretty bad trends, in my opinion. And we're just now, I think, almost 20 years later, getting to the point where they're bringing back more of these musicals where they have talented stage stars and dancers. And one of the movies that's going to save the musical format and bring back, the quality and the talent and the not having to cut around, a new version of West Side Story is coming to save the day.
Oh, true, but for Lisa, here's the thing with Chicago, at least they're set the time, at least the casting at the time-wise, made sense. Unlike in the West Side Story, I think including all the Spanish ones are played by white people. And of course we're getting the fun of the casting of West Side Story now. But with Chicago, you have really great diverse cast. And I would say, and it still had talented dancer, but especially like when it cut sideways during the court scene of Richard Gere, there was a tap dancing number. You see the tap dancing, and that was a really great scene. That is a really great tap dancing number.
Yeah, just to respond to what you're saying about, obviously when we're talking about West Side Story, the racial, issue is going to come up. But when you look at the great landmark movies, you have to put them in context. It's just something you have to do. And at the time, West Side Story is a movie that broke a lot of boundaries by having ethnic Latin actors, Rita Moreno, George Chakiris, who was Greek, and other Hispanic singers and dancers. Yes, they had white people playing Hispanic actors. That was what they did at the time. But they also were pushing the envelope. They were getting the song America. I didn't even talk about the songs in West Side Story. Some of the greatest songs of any musical. America, Tonight, Something's Coming. These are epic songs for the ages, and America in particular, that gives you the plight of the Latin culture, the Puerto Rican people who came to this country and what they have to deal with. And at the time, this really meant a lot. And yes, looking back 50 years later, there are going to be things that don't hold up, but that doesn't mean that the movie wasn't a landmark and it isn't a great movie. And I will say, like I said, that movie came out at a time when it was very fresh and it was really hitting and making a big impact. Chicago was based on a musical from 1975. And when Chicago was written, the stage musical in the 70s, it's really dealing with a lot of themes of how women were treated in our culture and things that were going on. And when you come back to it in the 2000s, a lot of those themes didn't have the same impact, or it wasn't told in that story with the same impact as if you had written it in 2002. So there was a little bit of a dated element to that movie that you don't have in West Side Story. And yes, there's a good tap dancing number in the movie, but it's not overall astounding like West Side Story.
But of course, we'll get back to your statement of like, when I led to more statement of Chicago, of how it led to like a Phantom Opera of, and of course Russell Crowe as Lee Mithra. But also, here's the thing: it also led to stuff like La La Land, The Greatest Showman, because the couple of people that worked on Chicago worked on those. Well, at least one of them worked on The Greatest Showman. Also, the director directed 9, Into the Woods, and also it came out at perfect time because
time. No problem there. All right, so we actually, Kevin, you can continue your points if you'd like, because the closing goes back to you first. Your last minute on the clock when you speak.
All right. I was thinking, like, okay, Chicago 8. It's one of the best entertainment musicals. It brought back the love of musicals that we have now. Because like I think right after the era of the golden era of the musicals of Sound Music of West Side Story, there's a long gap of some good musicals, but other than that, nobody ever went to see a musical. I think musicals were laughed at. But Chicago was the first one to reevaluate and regenerate people's attention to musical, which led to a strong course of other bright. Some bad and weird musical, but also some really great
and time. All right, good closing to the argument there. Jeremy, last minute goes to you. Time starts when you speak.
Yeah, I would counter that West Side Story came in the early 60s, and the 60s was probably the biggest decade for musicals ever. These were the biggest films, the biggest, highest grossing movies that are out there. You had the Sounds of Music, the My Fair Ladies, all of these movies. It wasn't until you got to the 70s when more independent character-based movies were kind of taking over, The Godfather and stuff, that the musical dropped off. And yes, Chicago did bring the musical back to some moments, but again, it was directed by a guy who went on to do, Into the Woods, which isn't a great movie musical. Robert Wise went on to do Sound of Music, a great movie musical. It led to, I would even say, La La Land. A lot of people love the movie, but they can also say you have people that aren't singers and dancers trying to perform, and it's a form of musical storytelling that is not as satisfying. It's not as landmark. It's not going to stand the test of time as just brilliant direction, setting the camera, letting your cast sing, letting them dance, having some of the greatest music that's ever been written for the stage, and not a dated musical like Chicago.
And time. All right. There we go. A very good first round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back for the moment and bring forth our judges, which we are joined by, as I said, Mr. Papa West, Mr. McLovin there. And our third judge is here. He is the mashiest of potatoes, Caleb Hansen. So just so you guys know, because Caleb got here partway through the first round, I will still serve as third judge for this round, should it be needed. After that, Caleb will take over duties from me. In terms of fact-checking, outside of the basic, I could look up the song set list and that type of thing. The only thing that was really fact-check worthy was the point at the end that talks about the careers of the people following it. And yeah, it was right. Obviously, Robert Wise did go on to direct Sound of Music, which I believe was also either won or was nominated for Best Picture. I didn't get that far down in the Wikipedia, but I know that offhand. It was at least nominated. Bill Condon, who wrote Chicago, was later involved in other musicals as well. He was behind, as writer and or director, the film Dreamgirls. He was also behind Beauty and the Beast, and he was a writer on The Greatest Showman. The director of the film, Rob Marshall, also went on to do other musicals. He did the 2009 Daniel Day-Lewis film 9, as was mentioned, Into the Woods. He also did Mary Poppins Returns. So in the end, it all comes back to Julie Andrews or something related to her. With that said, Jacob, I go to you first. Who is your victor and why, in as concise a point as you can make it?
I am giving my point to Jeremy. Both Jeremy and Kevin did a fantastic job in this one. I just felt Jeremy did a better job of pitching the entire movie, and then also bringing up the songs. Being able to bring up the songs in a musical is very key, and so just doing that is why I'm giving it to him.
All right, and Mr. McLovin, Superbad was not a musical, but these two were, so which one gets your point?
Are you ever going to stop making the Superbad puns?
Not until I run out of them, and I haven't seen the movie recently, so I don't have long left.
Well, I know how it is competing first time in these, so I understand getting tripped up in words. But I'm going to have to give my point to Jeremy just because he made his points a little more concise, and the thing that kind of sealed the fate was he mentioned, yeah, my movie is in that golden era of musicals. So I'm going to have to give the point to Jeremy.
All right, there we go. So with that said, judges, thank you. I will go ahead and send you to the back for the moment and bring forth our competitors once again. And absolutely, Kevin, I do have to give you props. Obviously, you were getting a little strung up there at the start, but you grew into it really, really well there towards the end.
Great
And
job.
Keep it up, man. You did a great job. But the first point does go to Jeremy after that round, which means we move on to question number 2. And that is centered around, funny enough, we mentioned West Side Story, the remake, the great Steven Spielberg, who has directed so many films that we loved and has slapped his name on so many films that we really want to love but didn't. And so that's why the question is, what movie that Steven Spielberg either only produced or executive produced would have been better if he had actually directed it? Seriously, go look it up. It's an infinite number of things, some of which you couldn't even imagine his name would be attached to. And I'm not even counting association by Amblin. I mean separately, his own name being on these projects. It is incredible. If he wasn't that good a director, I'd say it dilutes his career, but he's Steven fucking Spielberg, so it has no effect. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and get to the question. Jeremy, you are up first this time around, so your opening minute will begin as soon as you start speaking.
Okay, so yeah, Steven Spielberg is my favorite director. I'll just put it out there. So I was definitely pushing for a Steven Spielberg type topic. And when this particular one was brought to me, there were two things that came to mind. One was I wanted to come up with a movie that isn't huge in the pop culture today, one that's a little forgotten, it's gone a little by the wayside, and also one that I think was in Steven Spielberg's specific wheelhouse. It's a specific movie you would expect him to direct. So I came up with Arachnophobia from 1990, actually directed by Frank Marshall, his first film, and he was the producer on many of Steven Spielberg's films. And it's a comedy horror movie about a Brazilian spider that is shipped to a small town on accident. It mates with the local spider, and it populates the town full of crazy spiders, and the whole town's overrun. And the local guy, Jeff Daniels, he's the guy who ends up having to fight the spiders. And unfortunately, this would be a great Spielberg movie. It has all the makings, the horror, the thrills, the excitement, and this movie is just kind of middling, a little forgettable, and it's definitely one that came to mind as a top one.
All right, there we go. So we have our first movie on the table. Kevin, I go to you for our second. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Right. So, Steven Spielberg is one of the most talented directors. Created some movie characters and creatures that live along to this legacy. I pick Transformers because I feel like as director, he would have probably done a better job than Michael Bay. He would have kept it not juvenile at all, more exciting, and also you could tell by the end of other Transformers, you could actually see them fight at least, and not tell like I said, like one jump big fight, a dark mess of explosions on there. And plus, also, we would also give we would have gone, I think, a more in depth to the Autobots Decepticon battle, and we would have gotten a better view of Cybertron.
And that is time on the opening. So it is Arachnophobia versus Transformers. Jeremy, back to you. 2 minutes when you speak.
Yeah, so Steven Spielberg, this is a guy who has taken movies like Jaws, Jurassic Park, these great thrilling films where he makes a shark the most memorable and horrifying thing. He makes dinosaurs etched into our dreams and our nightmares forever. This is really, a genre he excels in. And Arachnophobia was a movie. It's a fun movie. It's okay. But the way that it was directed is just what you would expect from a generic Friday the 13th movie. Really, it's like they've got actors in these locations, they drop spiders on them. The characters aren't that memorable. The story isn't really that fantastic. But if you think about if you had the level of the cast of Jurassic Park or the cast of Jaws, if you really honed in on those characters and you really got really creative with the way that Steven Spielberg does with the camera work, this could have been a movie for the ages, and it's a movie no one even really remembers. Like, it comes up as a footnote sometimes. Transformers, on the other hand, is a movie that people remember. It's a movie that people know, and it's one that I think honestly is not in Steven Spielberg's wheelhouse. When Steven Spielberg tries to do just big, huge, sci-fi action, you can end up with a movie like Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, or a movie like Ready Player One, which is fine, but it's not really his best. I don't think that kind of movie is his wheelhouse. And I honestly, I'll be the first to say Michael Bay is not my number one director. But when I was a kid, in the 80s, I had Transformers. My friends had them, and we would think about, yeah, man, if there was a Transformers movie, you would get the battles with the robots, and it would be bam, bam, and explosions, and we'll get a teenager in there, and he's running around with the Transformers. It was a toy brand. Transformers is a toy brand that they made a movie out of, and I think that is Michael Bay's lane. And I think the first one, 2007, it does all of that. It gives you a big explosion, blow them up Transformers movie. It sells the toys. It's got Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox, which were very appealing in that first movie. I think it was fit for Michael Bay. If Spielberg did it, I would have fallen out of his wheelhouse and probably been more generic.
And time. All right, Jeremy, or not Jeremy, excuse me, Kevin, we go back to you. 2 minutes on the clock. Time starts when you speak.
Which are Ford, I feel like it is more of a central to Steven Spielberg's wheelhouse. I mean, he could push the technology, the visual effects more better than it already was. He could have probably of course, like, made us actually care about why is Optimus Prime here to stop Megatron? Why are they thinking about it on Earth? And also it would have prevented us like the dreaded infamous gratuitous Mega Fox shot. We wouldn't have those. We wouldn't even have the stupid Bumblebee pee joke where he pees oil on John Turturro, or even the very thing where they rescue Bumblebee, like, get all the stuff, the cars, but and they hold John Turturro and they put him down to his underwear. I'm like, we would have just prevented that from happening. Also with arachnophobia, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have fit for his wheelhouse. I feel like that would feel like more like, let's say, like a creature feature movie, like, say, like something done by at least Peter Jackson in the time, or even something like they would eventually have, like, say, Eight-Legged Freaks. And it was also I feel like this movie, I consider that an underrated movie because, like, it is quite I find it quite hilarious and also a bit scary. It's like mostly because, like, spiders are quite creepy. I yield my time.
All right, no problem. I am going to let the time run down, and since there is still 8 seconds, I'm going to take the time to address something that a Schmodown question recently drew attention to. Not that you guys got anything wrong, I'm sure, but bull fucking shit, Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox are juniors in that first film. I went to high school with juniors not too long ago, and they don't look that good. Let me tell you. Bullshit. Also, no junior knows how to strip a car as well as Megan Fox does. So, like, let's come on, Michael Bay. That's only the second weirdest thing you've ever done. If Transformers 4 and the Romeo and Juliet law didn't exist, it'd be the weirdest. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move into the open debate. Judges, scratch that from the record. That has no reflection on either of them. That's just my own personal venting. But let's go ahead and get into the open debate. 4 minutes on the clock when the first person speaks.
Yeah, I just want to say, when you talk about the greatest fears that people have, you just ask somebody, what scares you? What is the most skin-crawling thing you can think of? Spiders is going to be way at the top of that list. It is one of the most terrifying things in nature to people. I think a lot of people are more scared of spiders than they are of sharks. They could be in your house right now. They could be in this room with me right now. And the idea of a huge Brazilian spider this big, creepy gut body is terrifying. But we don't remember arachnophobia. Why? Why do we not remember a movie about one of the scariest things? Because you didn't have a director like Spielberg who could make it that scary, who could make it that funny. It's just kind of a generic movie, and he had some input on it, but if he had full input, it would be a classic. And I just want to respond to some of the things you were saying about Transformers, about goofy gags and the cheesy stuff and the Megan Fox shot. Like, these are things that younger audiences enjoy, and a lot of people do enjoy, as much as you can, shake your head at it. But it's like E.T. had dick jokes. Like, The Goonies is all, rude humor. This is something that kids are attracted to, and this movie is for kids. It's for toy lovers. That's what that movie is pitched at, and Michael Bay totally got it. And there actually is some heart in that movie with Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and Sam Witwicky. There is some heart in that film, and I think it goes along well with all the crazy action. Like I said, Michael Bay has a vision. Frank Marshall doesn't. Michael Bay had a vision for that movie to make it the huge, massive blockbuster that it was.
But I mean, come on. Let's see what that arachnophobia. Frank Marshall did a really great job with the creepiness of showing the creepiness of the spiders, of crawling around, like, period. Especially when they randomly killed like the football player. I mean, it's quite horrible. It's quite terrifying. around, especially when you're planning and doing a comedy or horror, it actually just, I feel like it quite sits well, especially with the comedy parts. But with the Transformers, I feel like well, yes, especially yes, like it was heckling for a kid, but like even including some of like ET as well. Well, had this dick show, but am I thinking? But here's the crazy thing: like Trevor came out came into the when I just finished the 8th passing grade and on my way to freshman year of high school. I'm like, am I thinking? This could be bad. This could have been better, way much more better and fantastic. And I'm pretty sure Steven Spielberg could have done a better job than that. And plus, I lost my train of thought. Right? We would not have I think at least we wouldn't have such goofy goofy parents from Sam with Wiki. Because you gotta admit those parents was really awkward and cringeworthy humor right with that one.
Well, to go back, one thing I want to bring up is you brought up the Megan Fox, butt shot, but there's a shameless scene in Arachnophobia where you have a teenage girl in a shower and a spider drops on her. Obviously, that was just there to be titillating. So it isn't like Transformers the only offender of that sort of thing. Like, this is something that, a lot of these movies do. And yeah, I mean, you brought up, that there are scary things in Arachnophobia, but again, they're like the level of like a Friday 13 movie. You watch them, you've got an Arachnophobia, you go, oh, ooh, ah, a little bit, but it doesn't stay with you. It doesn't land in the way that it could if it had a great story. I think if you put a great story if you have like great Oscar level acting and Spielberg level emotions in Transformers, what is that? Did you really need it in Transformers? You want to see the robots and you want to see the kids bonding with the robots. That's what you go to as Transformers movie for. And Michael Bay has a great vision for that. As much as it might not be what you like, he had the energy, and you remember that movie. If Arachnophobia fades away, those big moments of Transformers you will remember.
And time. All right, so we are actually going to keep with you, Jeremy, for the closing. 1 minute on the clock when you speak.
Yeah, again, I think of something like Ready Player One. It's a fine movie. It had some interesting stuff in it, but there was an energy missing in that movie. It's like Steven Spielberg, when it comes to our generation, the 80s, 90s youth generation that these particular properties come from, he just isn't the guy for that. He's the guy for classic monster movie. He's the guy for the movie that harkens back to the 50s and 60s. That's exactly what Arachnophobia is. It's a throwback to old monster movies and horror movies. This is something he's done again and again. And in Transformers, I just feel like it might have had some better acting. It might have not had the goofy jokes, but it's Transformers. I don't mind the goofy jokes, and the big one that the scenes with Optimus Prime at Sam's house, and some of the crazy action scenes involving military that you get in that movie, they're memorable. It's a memorable movie. Even the crazy jet scene and everything that you get in that film, it is what it is. It's Michael Bay being Michael Bay and having a vision. Arachnophobia doesn't have the same vision, and it's not fit for Spielberg.
All right, and Kevin, back to you for the final minute. Time starts when you speak.
With Arachnophobia, I feel like it's more better obviously now. Or at least Frank Martin did a better job, like with what it became, than say Steven Spielberg would ever do. Steven Spielberg with Transformers, I feel like he would have brought more elevation to it. He would have brought given more heart to it. We saw what he did with second War of Jurassic Park, and even with 2000's AI. He could have combined both, including the roles Minority Report. He would have done a way better job than Michael Bay would have done, because we would have you would have done more heart to it with Bumblebee and Sam throughout the relationship in that movie better than Michael Bay. We would have gotten, I think, at least a much better final act. And why, yes, it's memorable, but it's also Transformers. It's been down with Infamy, the series of it that was made throughout the day with Michael Bay helming throughout the series. Not to Bumblebee, we can't fix.
And time.
It's what got a better hand with directing it.
All right. Guys, another great round. Very passionate round there. That was nice to see. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys behind the scenes for just a moment as I bring on our 3 judges. So to give these guys a little bit of last minute time to come up with their decisions, because I'm not judging, I get to do the fun part of this show, which is take one thing they say and deep dive on it. Jerry mentioned phobias. So for fun, I decided to look up phobias. As was said, according to fearof.net, which because it has a .net, I'm going to assume it's official, arachnophobia, the fear of spiders, is actually the top fear of all the fears. The top 10 includes things that you hear a lot about and you would expect, including a fear of snakes, a fear of heights, the fear of dogs, which is number 5, thunder and lightning, small spaces, all the things you'd expect. Galeophobia, which is the fear of sharks, is number 54. And out of all the ones I read, my personal favorite is number 50, which is kumpunophobia. I'm sure I mispronounced that, but that is the fear of buttons, in which I find that funny unless you are somebody who is deathly scared of buttons, in which case I'm very, very sorry. I don't mean to offend you. But with that said, I'm going to go to our judges.
Aaron, you missed the best one.
What?
Hippopotamonstrous equipedaliophobia. It's the fear of long words.
I'll see if it's on the list. All right. Noah, I go to you. In as concise as you can hit it, who gets your point and why?
I'm going to say Jeremy again, just because Kevin didn't really expand too much on his ideas, even though I liked his ideas. And Jeremy made me feel like Michael Bay was the correct director choice for Transformers.
All right, and Mr. Hansen, I move to you next. Same thing, as concise as you can get it. Who gets your point and what sold you? You are muted, good sir.
Sorry about that. I was a little bit on Kevin's side initially. I thought Jeremy made a mistake bringing up adventure movies that weren't good by Spielberg, because there are a whole bunch of them, and Kevin did come in on that with his closer. But I feel like Kevin's argument seemed to be more that if Spielberg had written it rather than directed it, I didn't think he gave any specificity of how his directing would improve Transformers. So I went with Jeremy.
All right, judges, thank you oh so much. And to close up the cliffhanger, Hippo Manama is number 26 on the list of 100 words. Judges, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back as we bring back in our competitors. So right now the score is 0-2, but anything can happen at any given time. And we move on to the third question, which is, again, it's kind of funny that we are recording matches in the world of the pandemic, because everything that I say could come back to bite me horribly down the road. But in just a few weeks, we have Halloween coming out, so it's not a surprise that Halloween is on the mind. It was also on the mind of one of our competitors, and that's why it is here tonight. Your question is, what is the most underrated entry in the Halloween series? There are so many good ones, even the ones that we don't necessarily always gravitate to. We've already spent more than one match shitting on Rob Zombie's entries into the series, and I can gratefully say none of those are here today. I think we can all agree that those just suck straight up. But we do have 2 movies for the argument of underrated, and for this one, Kevin, I go to you first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
When I think of underrated Halloween movies, I always think of Halloween H2O. Mostly because it did fall, I think, 20 years of the anniversary of it. Plus, I feel like it would have been a better conclusion through the series, and I think Jimmy Carter did a really great job with the confrontation of Laurie and Michael. You see her actually still being scarred. I think they talk about the remake. You see, and also you see how both Kevin Williams, the writer, judged with what he did with Scream, and I Know What You Last Summer. He does a great job with the writing of it by giving it set in the 90s as well.
And time. All right, Jeremy, on to you. Time starts when you speak.
All right, for me, easily the most underrated, if you're talking about underrated, the one that people don't really talk about, that doesn't come up enough, for me it is totally Halloween 2 from 1981, the second film in the original franchise, written by John Carpenter. He actually, obviously had started the franchise, directed the first film, but he wrote the screenplay for this one and got a very talented young director named Rick Rosenthal to take over. And this movie, I think, it does a lot of things that it doesn't get credit for. It's one of the first horror movies that is a sequel that directly goes from where the last movie ended. Like literally a minute after the last movie ended, this movie continues, and it does something that I think a lot of the other Halloween movies don't, in giving us a unique setting. It takes place mainly in a hospital, and it uses the hospital set beautifully to create tension and thrills, and it isn't just a bunch of teenagers in houses, which is what you get from most of the franchise. It's unique, it has really memorable moments, and I think that it holds up in a lot of ways that the other film we're talking about.
And time. All right, Kevin, back to you. 2 minutes on the clock when you start speaking.
With Halloween 2, it is a fall through the first Halloween movies. It's also we see at least a great adult Laurie, and especially her having a son. It is where she's actually teaching, and around holidays she still feels the scars throughout, like after those long years, especially of not dealing with Michael. She still has the nightmare, and she's worried about her son when he would to not leave this area, because she probably know that if she were to get killed, or at least she's aware like Mike's probably still around, she will find her son and kill him. And plus also it also leads to this memorial shot of in one of the scenes, Michael's appearing through the door, like through the door window, and Laurie looks up. She sees him right there, and she still feels a bit frightened. But I think the most underrated part is, I think this one is one of the most. I think it's one of the people that people always forget about. This one. It's because I really typically it's stuck between with where Broderick of the direction. I feel like this. It really does deserve the love, the attention it needs, because like it's what led to what we had like with the sequel remake of Halloween that we had in 2018. I yelled my time.
All right, no problem. I'll pause it for a sec, Jeremy, but when you start speaking, time will begin.
Yeah, just to go back to Halloween 2 again, just to expound on why I think this movie is so underrated and so effective. One of the very early scenes in the film is Mike Myers has just gotten away from the house, Laurie's house, where the first film takes place, and you get a first-person camera move like you did in the first film of him going into just one of the neighbor's house and getting a new knife, and just that idea that he could be in your house. He could wander into your house on a Halloween night is terrifying, and it made it. It really brought it home in a way that you didn't even see as much in the first movie. It was taking those things to a new level, and then Kevin brought up the fact of his movie. You have Laurie dealing with the grief and everything she's going through. Well, this is Laurie having just experienced what she experienced in the first movie, and I'm sorry.
You're
Okay,
good. Keep going.
so this was Laurie having experience what she just experienced and still having to deal with it. They're trying to recover, being in the hospital, the place where you're trying to recover and get better, and he's still there. He's still alive somehow. And the other great thing you have is Donald Pleasance coming back. You get more into his character as Dr. Loomis, just this ongoing horror that he can't escape. And it reveals the familial connection that Laurie has to Michael. It makes it way more personal and brings it home, and it ultimately is the story of Dr. Loomis's sacrifice. He's the one who has to make that final sacrifice to blow up Michael Myers and take him out. And this was going to be the last movie. They had made that decision. This was going to end the story. Unfortunately, the franchise later had other ideas, but it really works. And I'll get into it more, but Halloween H2O, I think, is actually the most overrated Halloween movie, because I think Kevin Williamson was actually the wrong guy to write this movie. He takes this classic franchise and tries to inject the Scream type dialogue with the teenage characters and make it trendy and make it hip, and it's the teenage characters who don't really care. I think that takes away from the emotions with Laurie. I think that having those teenage characters, it pulls you out of the movie a lot, and the 2018 Halloween gets more into
All right, we were going to go on to round number 3. This is the back and forth. The time will start when the first person speaks.
Okay. So we just get this out of the way. Let's not talk about our retcon ending, because trust me, we're gonna both go back and forth about how crazy all of our retcon is, at least. But
go ahead.
But yes, like, wow, of course, it was as of its time, like, of course, but it actually makes sense, because with killing to right, because it brought back Michael, and Laurie, but he had to keep it like a 90s style, because that was pretty much what we kind of wanted our horrors to be, kind of like, at least to be more it's hard to kind of for nice because youth, not euthanize or euthanize, but like keep it up its time. At least that's what we wanted our horror, and I feel like it did brought back. In fact, I feel like they kept that thing even with the sequel remake as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I think that you've got these characters in Halloween H2O, that these hip, I'm too hip type kids, and it's just because they have all this dialogue back and forth that just it's like this light comedic sarcastic dialogue. You can't really get engaged with those characters in a movie that is trying to bring you back into Laurie's trauma. It's trying to continue her story. It's trying to tell the story of how she and her son have tried to move past it, and it caught up with them, and the movie undercuts it. And I would say, of all the Halloween movies I've seen, H2O actually has some of the least memorable kills. Like the kills in that, I don't think it uses the school setting very well. It's just him basically stabbing people again. It doesn't do a lot of very ingenious stuff with it. And then, I mean, again, if you want to see Laurie Strode really dealing with this, really being haunted, having her whole life destroyed by what she went through with Michael Myers and really feeling it, you get that in the 2018 Halloween way more than you do in H2O. And it didn't, the teenage characters in that movie don't really distract. They feel more natural than they do in the H2O film. And I would say the ending of Halloween 2, this conclusive ending, gives you a satisfying resolution, whereas, H2O, you have the scene where she, decapitates Michael Myers, and it leads to one of the biggest cop-outs ever, that she actually decapitated an orderly. And I think that was seeded in the movie to continue the franchise and not have the satisfying oomph that Halloween 2 does.
Or how about your cop-out anywhere, like where at the start of the fourth one, they both returned alive, both Michael and Dr. Pleasance survived, unscathed by the explosion.
Yeah, but that was not something that the filmmakers of Halloween 2 intended at all. The franchise was taken away from John Carpenter years later and continued in movies that he did not endorse. What we're talking about in H2O this was something that was seeded into the movie by the filmmakers. They knew they were restarting the franchise. They wanted to continue the franchise. They wanted a new teen slasher Scream series, and that cop-out ending was part of what they were aiming for, to continue something, whereas Halloween 2 is much more solid and honest filmmaking, in my opinion. It's not this, oh, we're hip, we're postmodern sort of horror movie. It's a real horror movie that hits you and continues the trauma of its characters in a more powerful way.
Yeah, but yours, I think a good chunk of the movie is basically with Laurie in the hospital bed. Like, I think for a good chunk of the movie, at least with H2O, you actually see her interacting, still feel the scarred nightmares of it still.
All right, and that will be time on the open debate round. We head back to Kevin for the closing. 1 minute on the clock for you, sir, when you begin speaking.
With Halloween H2O, actually, it did brought back Michael and Laurie, but also again it did give it an impactful emotional moment with Laurie, especially finally confronting Michael one-on-one, especially with eventually leading him to finally killing him, fully decapitating him. Plus, also it gave us one big movie moment that throughout Legacy of Horror movie is you can't kill LL Cool J. No one can kill LL Cool J. Sharks, not government assassins, not even Michael Myers. No one can kill LL Cool J. And plus, it makes Kevin Williams did a really great job with the writing of. He gave the film more modern edge of the '90s, and it gave from what it served
and time
of the series.
All right, there we go. Jeremy, you get the last word on this round. Time starts when you speak.
You know, Scream is a brilliant screenplay by Kevin Williamson. It's inspired. He obviously was driven by creative energy to write that film. But if you go forward a few years and you're getting the Scream retreads and everything, and he obviously got hired to do a job on H2O, that movie just not sing in the same way. Yeah, LL Cool J is a fun thing to throw in, but the movie just doesn't hit you the way that a movie like Scream, it was meant to be that movie. This was trying to cash in on that. And going back to Halloween 2, I mean, this is the creative team of the first movie continuing the story. And I would argue having Laurie in that hospital bed for much of the movie made her vulnerable. It got you to see how the events affected other people in the town. And when she comes back at the end and she has to fight the guy again, and her and Dr. Loomis, their story is powerful, it's primal, and Michael Myers is still really terrifying in that second movie with really innovative filmmaking. He's not just, the same boogeyman we've seen throughout the 80s and 90s by the time of H2O.
And time. All right, guys. Another great round. Go ahead and send both of our competitors to the back. Great job, guys, on that one. And we will bring in our three judges. So to go over something that was kind of brought up and referenced, whether it was legitimately referenced or kind of joked about, the Halloween films is just a messy timeline. Now, as I've said before, our only discussion on the Halloween films thus far has really just been to kind of shit on Rob Zombie's entries. So for those of you who may not understand how this all works, I'll try and explain it to you as brief as I can. There was Halloween 1 and there was Halloween 2, and both of those, whether as a writer, producer, or actual director, were overseen creatively by John Carpenter. The Bastard Child, that is Halloween 3, came out, was completely unrelated to anything else because that's what they wanted it to be, a what's the word for that? Anthology series. But when that movie failed, Carpenter was basically kicked, and they moved on and made 4, 5, and 6. And then a few years later, after 6 crashed and burned, H2O went into production. Interesting note that I found while researching it, John Carpenter was actually almost set to come back and direct it. However, he did not end up directing the film because his starting rate was $10 million because he believed that he was owed more money for the original than he was actually paid. There was a dispute with the producer. When they said no to $10 million, he said, said, fine, I'll do it for less, but give me a 3-picture deal and I want control over the movies. The studio said no to that, so Carpenter walked once again. H2O got made. Resurrection had Busta Rhymes taking on Michael Myers. That also failed. They rebooted it again. That's when we got the bastardization thanks to Rob Zombie, which was then rebooted again in 2018 with John Carpenter back involved this time, except they got rid of all the other sequels. For what it's worth, no matter how many times they've rebooted the Michael Myers mythology, Halloween 3 still doesn't matter. But it's a decent movie, so it's worth checking out. With that said, Caleb, I'm going to go to you first on this one. Who gets your vote and what sold you? And good sir, once again, you are.
Yep. I got it that time before you told me.
You're good.
All right, so I'm a little bit confused about this round because the question was underrated, and I don't think anybody they picked the 2 most well-known Halloween movies that aren't Halloween. But so I think they both did a good job of explaining why they're good entries into the Halloween franchise. But nobody made any kind of attempts to explain why they're underrated in any way. So because Jeremy was the only one that talked negative about anybody's movie, I think that made Kevin's argument, so I'm giving it to Kevin.
Okay, there we go. So the first vote does go to Kevin. Jacob, I pass the buck up to you. Who does your point go to and why?
So I'm in the exact same boat as Caleb, except I went with the other direction and gave it to Jeremy because he was able to talk negative about the other movie.
Yeah, but he didn't explain why his movie was.
All right.
He explained why it was good.
That's a debate for off camera, guys. You can wrestle each other when these two are done. Noah, I hate to put you in the middle of these two, but I am going to. You get the final vote on this round. Who gets your point and what sold you?
It's kind of been a struggle for this one, especially just because I'm not too familiar with Halloween. But I think that makes it a little bit easier, just because I can actually let the person's argument who's stronger sway me, and I'm gonna have to go to Jeremy because his argument swayed me again, just because he was able to talk about his movie and why he felt it was underrated and what made it good. At least to me, that's what I got out of the argument. So yeah, I'm gonna go to Jeremy.
Okay. All right, judges, thank you so much for your help tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and send you to the back because your winner by way of knockout is Jeremy the Atom Adams, coming back with a vengeance, doing his little celebration dance, taking the first victory. Jeremy, might I say, welcome back to Movie Battleground. How does it feel?
Oh, thank you so much, Aaron. You know, it's great. It feels good. But basically, I didn't really say this at the beginning, but the reason that, I came back to do this when back in the old days, I had kind of retired and decided that debate was a little too stressful for me at the time. But, you and I, we had a really great interview on the Schmodown and just reconnecting with you and seeing just what a great guy you are and how much I respect you and knowing that you're going to be relaunching this. And I know the amount of work and effort and everything that you put into this. And I just felt, I couldn't be the guy to be like, nah. I felt like, just out of respect, I wanted to come back and unretire, at least for one time, just to show you and everyone else, Matt and everybody involved with this, how much I appreciate what you guys do, because it's something different. It's not something that I do, but it's very unique in the community. But yeah, I didn't expect it to go how it did. I felt like, once I kind of started talking, I really felt comfortable again. Just, I have a lot of passion for these movies. I have a lot of knowledge for these movies. So once I kind of get on a roll, it kind of starts just coming out naturally. But I feel like, honestly, if I was as fully invested as I was, back in the old days when I was making the title run and really doing more in-depth research and just, codifying arguments the way that I had previously, I feel like I could have done even better than I did tonight. I just feel like tonight was me feeling comfortable again. So yeah, it feels good. It feels like a good first step, coming back.
Absolutely. I will never say no to compliments, but I do appreciate it, man. We try to put on something here that I hope everybody enjoys. And so far, I think it's working. I don't know. We record these before the comments come in, so for all I know, I'm just getting hated on all these videos. But we'll find out when it happens. So with that said, obviously, as I know, you are a very busy guy, so it's not like I'll be making you play tomorrow or anything. But everyone who competes does have a spot in a tournament. Obviously, we can discuss a little more afterwards if it works for your schedule. But you do have a spot in the tournament, and you go into the 1-0 bracket where every single person who won a match goes into, and your competitor would be Mr. Alec Miller. What do you know about Alec, and how do you feel about that matchup?
I haven't seen Alec compete in debate, but I have seen him compete in trivia. And I've seen him hosting around the leagues. I think he's a really smart guy. He's a very knowledgeable guy. And whenever you have somebody who's eloquent and smart and knows movie trivia, you're going to have a fight on your hands. So it'll be an honor. And like I said, next time out, now that I'm getting back into this, I gotta bring my A game a bit. So with somebody like Alec, I know that's what I'll have to do. But I do, just real quick, I just want to double back and say, I don't think that this really reflects on Kevin. I think that Kevin has a lot of talent for this. You could really see his passion for these movies. And I've been there when it's your first time doing something. It can be very stressful. Even your 10th time doing it can be very stressful. And I take nothing away from him. And when he started really coming back and hitting my arguments, with arachnophobia, and even, in the third argument, I definitely could see why one of the judges went with him on that one. I think that he showed his stuff, and it was an honor. And I personally look forward to seeing Kevin again.
Absolutely. So do I. And again, it is worth noting, guys, obviously this is the last of our opening 16 matches. And in 16 matches, only 2 competitors managed to win by knockout. And you're looking at one of them right here. Jeremy, it was great to see you again, brother. And I look forward to having you back in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. And we will go ahead and bring in Mr. Kevin Moreno. And again, I do have to say to you, and this is a little bit of behind the scenes, but we have some breaks in, filming at times. And the person who was kind of hype you up and help you out there, Noah McCausland, knows exactly how you feel. Because as I said, Jeremy is the only person, one of 2 people to win by knockout. Noah is the other person who has lost by knockout, and he was also a rookie, so he totally understands the feeling. I'm never going to make up and act like losing feels good, but how are you feeling after the experience?
I felt fine. I expected bad for me. I really did. Because I'm like this one. I like to test it out. I would make sure to make sure at least I hope for the bad, to make sure at least I can learn from it. That's my method.
And I think, like with a lot of the other rookies who came into it, and I feel like I repeat myself a lot, but I feel like it is true every single time, the learning happens immediately. From your first round to your second round, you could see immediately where you were getting a feel for it, getting into it more, and kind of picking up where things need to be adjusted and what needs to be strengthened in terms of the argument. And I think you did a really great job, man. I agree with Jeremy 100%. The knockout isn't necessarily indicative of your lack of skill as a debater. It's just indicative of how good Jeremy is. And in this case, it was all random matchups. So the only person you have to hate is the wheel. I will send you the website we use if you would like it, so you can take your anger out on it.
No, good. I'm good. At least it gave me anything involving the Crimes of Grindelwald, because I hate the Crimes of Grindelwald.
I'll remember that for next time. Crimes of Grindelwald. All right. No, so go ahead. And you also have a slot in a tournament. It wouldn't feel right making anyone who lost have to wait too long to play again. And so you will be going into the 0-1 bracket of our tournaments. And your next opponent will be one Steve Mesa. What can you tell me about Steve, if you know him? And if you do know him, what do you think of that pair-up?
I do not know Steve, but I'm confident that this could be a really good match. If not, it could probably be an 0-2 knockout for me.
Well, I'd think more on the positive side. I'd keep it positive, man. You did a great job today, and I look forward to having you back in the near future, man. We'll see you next time.
I had a blast, and Jeremy did a phenomenal job, and it was really an honor playing against him.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you so much, man, for being here. We'll see you next time. All right, guys. So that is it. That is the first 16 matches. Now, if you remember way back at the start, the way that this works out is we had 32 competitors. They all play. That sorts them into a bracket. Our 16 winners are in the 1-0 bracket. Our 16 losers are in the 0-1 bracket. From here, we are playing 2 different tournaments to get our top 2 contenders to officially reclaim the Movie Battleground title, which currently honorarily sits with Joe Fairley, who was the last person to hold it prior to the hiatus of the show. But guys, thank you so much for being here. It's going to be awesome, and I can't wait to see more of this. Please be sure to check out everything else on TMG Entertainment. And for everyone here at Movie Battleground, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you all next time. Take care.